Welcome to Mamahood After Trauma, where we stop pretending and heal out loud. I'm Emily Cleghorn, trauma survivor, cycle breaker, and mama rebuilding from the inside out. If you're ready to break cycles, trust yourself again, and rise without shame, you're in the right place. Let's go. Before we dive in, mama, if you're a mama healing from trauma and trying to parent differently, but you're not sure what support or next step is right for you, I totally understand. And that's why I've created something to help. Take my free Find Your Next Step to Calm and Healing quiz to discover where you are in your healing journey and what your next best step looks like. You'll find the link in the show notes below. Hello, mama, and welcome to this episode of the Mamahood After Trauma podcast. I am thrilled that you have taken some time out of your busy mama schedule to tune in and listen to our conversation today. Today, I am joined by another Emily. Welcome.
Hi. Hi, other Emily. I love this.
Well, let's dive in. Can you share with our listeners a bit about yourself and what you do?
Great. Well, I'm Emily, the other Emily. I have a 16-year-old daughter who is autistic and ADHD. I am a life coach, so I work predominantly with neurodivergent women over 35. I deal with a lot of late diagnoses, but I have a background. I've got sort of 25 years experience in media, film and TV, theater production, and writing. So I kind of come from a very disconnected journey into this one place, which I love.
Yeah, what brought you to it though?
Do you know what? I think now that I understand that I have ADHD, because I don't know what it's like in the States, but here in the UK, when your kid gets diagnosed, you're called into a meeting and they're like, so your child has ADHD. And then they just stare at you for 5 minutes. And I was like, oh, me, I have ADHD. So in that moment, so many things made sense because I have had a career that's kind of jumped around and chopped and changed, very much different to my friends who like have had solid, dedicated careers. And I think what's ultimately led me to where I am now, but has driven the entire process, if I can look backwards, is my love of storytelling.
Mhm.
And that drove me in the beginning as a creative. It definitely drove me as a producer. But I think as I've gotten older, people's stories and the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we tell
Mhm.
other people about ourselves has become so integral to my work. And so one of the reasons I love working with neurodivergent people like I do is because we've believed a story about ourselves for a very long time that may not be true. And so for
Mhm.
me, that I love because I think, diagnosis can bring a lot of things for a lot of people, but for me, there was a real sense of getting to understand myself even more.
Mhm.
And I think I've kind of been on this journey for a while.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more in a bit, but it's those moments that you get that are so rare where you get to have insight and understanding into yourself into a way that you haven't before. So those stories just drive everything I do. I've always been really fascinated with storytelling, and this is how it's kind of inhabiting itself in my life at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I think if memory is serving me correctly, um you've had quite the healing journey which has led to helping you helping your daughter feel empowered as well. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course we can. So I had postnatal depression and postnatal psychosis after my daughter Maisie was born. Um, for sort of background, they think that it came on probably between sort of 3 to 5 months postpartum. And then I wasn't diagnosed till she was 10 months old. And then I was really heavily undertreated, like significantly, that when I had the psychosis, she was 13 months old. So I spent basically the first year of Maisie's life believing that I was just this terrible mother, that everybody
Mm.
else had it figured out, everybody else knew what they were doing. Um, they all had it together, and I did not. So when I got my diagnosis, it was like I was so happy because I was like, oh, there's a reason for this. I feel this way
Yeah.
for a reason, and I'm not supposed to feel this way. And because of that, I kind of went around telling everyone, like, there was no shame in this for me. It's quite funny when I meet people that have really reacted with shame from a diagnosis, because I was like, hey, everyone, like, this is a thing. There is a thing. There's a reason for this.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I learned in those moments was so much that everybody was holding on to something that they were so afraid to tell other people because of how
Mm-hmm.
they would be received.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was so quick to share, everybody started sharing their stuff with me.
Mm.
And I always say that I became a sort of holder, a keeper of other people's secrets and the things that they were afraid to say out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I have to do something with this. Like, this is really powerful. Like, why are we not saying
Yeah.
these things out loud? Like we are all
Mm-hmm.
connected in this thing that we're so afraid to share. Um, and obviously, my only choice with that was to write a musical. Of course, that was the most logical next step, right? Like, of course, that's what I'll do.
Well,
Sure.
mine was to start a podcast, so
Yeah, exactly. I think, I am a creative person. I've always been a creative person. I needed something in that. And actually, you know, and this comes into play later in her life, but I had learned very quickly, like I had a song for everything with Maisie. Like we had a getting dressed song, we had a going to the potty song, we had a bedtime song, we had a leaving the house song. Um, and I know now that part of that was me adapting to her needs and making life easy. So then every time she put a coat on, there was the same coat song about putting one arm in, then the other arm. So everything was done exactly the same way over and over again, which really helped her autism. I didn't know that. She wasn't diagnosed with autism until she was 14. She was diagnosed with ADHD at 12. But I just figured that out for myself. And the
Mhm.
psychologists were always like, wow, you've done really well. And I was like, I just want to be clear, that wasn't my plan. Like, I was just making my life easy. I wasn't trying to be some amazing super mom that had this all figured out. Like, I was just like making my own life easy here. But to go back to that sort of beginning of my sort of trauma journey, was this realization that I was broken. Like my brain was
Mm.
literally broken. I always say to people, it's like the brain equivalent of a heart attack. Um, and that takes recovery time. And
Mhm.
then obviously a musical was the best way of dealing with that recovery.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. What was the musical called?
So the musical is called The Good Enough Mums Club. Um, and it literally came out of a day. I remember going into a session with my therapist at the time, and I'd had a really rough day, and I'd gone in tears, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I am never going to be like this amazing, perfect, great mom. Like,
Mhm.
I'm just going to have to be okay with the fact that like I'm just doing good enough. And she said, you do know that there is literally a psychological theory of parenting called good enough parenting. And I was like, no, I did not know that. I thought I just invented it. Like, damn. Um, but then she said something that changed my life. And that was that she said, Emily, in my private practice, I see more patients from perfectionist parents than I ever do of parents who were doing their best.
Mhm.
And I still get goosebumps when I say it. It was just, and I was like, then what the hell am I doing this for? Like, why am I trying to kill myself, trying to be this perfect, you know, absolutely perfective parent if that is damaging? Why am I choosing this path? And that literally that day hit me.
That's a powerful question to ask yourself.
Right. Like, who am I doing it for?
Mm-hmm.
But also, I have to keep up with that. She has to keep up with that.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's damaging, why would I want that in the first place?
Yeah.
And I think at the time, I knew it was big because I had that huge light bulb moment, but I think it ultimately just changed my life because if it's damaging, why would we do it? And I know
Well,
perfectionism
yeah.
as a whole is damaging, but I think having it immediately sort of thrown in my face like that was kind of a huge wake up moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and look, I'm not going to lie, I had to come back to it later on in my journey as well because
Yeah.
it's not an easy one to let go, but in that moment, I definitely let go of it in my parenting in a huge way.
Yeah, that's really powerful. So how has all of this unfolded in your parenting journey and your relationship with your daughter?
Yeah, I have the most amazing relationship with Maisie, and I'm so grateful for it. And I think it comes from a lot of that being willing to be imperfect and being
Yeah.
good enough. It's been just kind of the two of us, against the world since she was about two. Her dad's around, she sees him, but it's us as a little package. So I think that's been huge. But I've also been really honest since she was tiny about like mental health, my struggles. There's been no illusion of perfection for her, but there
Mm-hmm.
has been always an illusion of you can get through this, we can get through it together, you're not on your own. And I think
Mm-hmm.
living by those things has been hugely important in demonstrating like kids learn what they see and feel way
Yeah.
more than what we tell them, right? So I think that's been really interesting for both of us to sort of have that. I'm also, I didn't know it and know it now, I'm raising an autistic and ADHD child, which has its own challenges and involves so much advocacy and care
Mm-hmm.
and trying to steer her out of traumatic situations for the
Mm-hmm.
future.
This episode is sponsored by The Rising Room. Hey, Mama, did you know the Mamahood After Trauma podcast is more than just something you listen to? Every week, we have conversations about trauma healing, triggers, emotional regulation, and breaking generational cycles. But I know listening is only one part of the journey. That's why I've created the Rising Room. It's a space where you can go deeper with the podcast through reflection prompts, monthly resources, and support designed to help you take what you're learning and apply it to your own healing journey. And if you're ready for deeper support, the regulation pathway gives you a guided next step to understand your triggers, regulate your nervous system, and begin creating more peace in your mamahood. You can learn more and find out your next step through the link in the show notes. Now let's get back to our episode.
So I think it's developed and it's kind of gone on. And then I had a secondary sort of trauma when she must have been about 7
Mm-hmm.
or 8. I think she was 7. Um, that I required a lot of really intensive therapy. I completely burnt out. I really struggled. I ended up being signed off work, and then I ended up basically attending as an outpatient, this sort of outpatient hospital, where I had therapeutic care. I always say they made it a part-time job. It was like Monday to Thursday, 10 till 4. That was my job, was to go to therapy. Um, and it was another moment where everything stopped and I had an opportunity to look at my life before and I had an opportunity to take stock and make changes. And I think that was another huge point in me not changing myself, because I always think this is interesting. I don't think that I changed who I am. I don't think the essence of me changed, but the way I dealt with things massively changed. And my
Yeah.
understanding of who I am, how I operate in the world, why I do those things was
Mm,
huge. And where I was, the sort of mornings were set up as creative therapy, so creative writing, art therapy, those sorts of things, positive psychology. And then the afternoons were set up as psychoeducational. So communication styles, stress management, transactional analysis. Like it was super educational. And I respond really well to that. Always want to know the why. Like, why am I doing
hmm.
this? Why? So I found that really useful. And I remember after, as I started to come out of that time, I remember saying to people, like, I've spent the first 42 years of my life believing a lot of things about myself
Yeah.
that aren't true. Do I want to spend the rest of my life, the next 42 years of my life, also believing these things that aren't true?
Mm,
And
another powerful
it's,
question.
yeah, like, I wasn't very nice to myself. Like, do I
Girl,
want to spend the
same.
rest of my life doing that, right? Like,
Yeah.
and look, it's a work in progress. I always say to people,
Hmm.
it's a work in progress. So I call the nasty voice in my brain, I call it Rumpelstiltskin. Um, After the fairy tale goblin because, Rumpelstiltskin hated to have his name said out loud. And I'd learned with the intrusive thoughts in my PPP and everything that, the best thing with intrusive thoughts is you acknowledge them, you name them, and you move on. So I see Rumpelstiltskin like that. He hates to have his name said out loud. So, and when you do say his name out loud, he has a little temper tantrum and he falls through the floor in my brain. So when I hear that voice, I'm like, okay, that's Rumpelstiltskin. Like, that's not me. That's a really negative track. I don't have to believe it. It's not true. I'm going to acknowledge that that's Rumpelstiltskin. He's going to have a little tantrum and fall through the floor, and then we're going to move on. And it really comes from that point. Like, I don't know anyone, even those people that I feel like have been on huge healing journeys, that don't still have part of that. Like, you've had it for
Yeah.
so much of your life.
Hmm.
It's not just going to vanish because you want it to. It just gets quieter and you get
Yeah.
better at responding to it and ignoring it or brushing it off or whatever you need to do. Because people are always like, okay, I want to get rid of that voice. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if you can. Maybe there's people out there that have like are ultimate gurus of like self-compassion and they've rid themselves of that voice. But I think these things are written into our neural pathways over a long period of time. We know we
Yeah.
can change them. I always say it's like digging the Channel Tunnel with a plastic spoon. It ain't
Yeah.
easy and it's not very accurate. So let's just quiet it. Let's not go for complete, eradication because that might not be possible. And I don't want to hit a point where
Yeah.
I'm disappointed in how far I've come, which is amazing, just
Yeah.
because every now and then Rumpelstiltskin chirps up in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. I call those thoughts brain goblins, but
Mm.
Rumpelstiltskin also fits.
Little green goblin. He is. He's a little green goblin. Has like a
Yeah.
giant temper tantrum because
Yeah.
I don't listen to him anymore.
Yeah. He's there. He throws his fit and
And then
you
you
don't
move
give him
on.
much attention.
Yeah.
So, what is one thought that you would like to leave, maybe a piece of advice with our listener who maybe is beating herself up over not being the perfect parent, or maybe that's what she's been striving for, and now hearing that, wait a minute, maybe being the perfect mom isn't the goal.
I think the thing is perfect for who,
Perfect for who?
right? Is it perfect for you because this is what the way you believe you should show up in the world? This is the way you believe you should parent.
Hmm.
I often think when you're in that situation, you're parenting the child you wish you had rather than the child you actually have, which can be really difficult and really damaging. Are
Yeah.
you being the perfect parent for your kid? If
Hmm.
you have more than one kid, that's going to be a different parent.
Yeah.
So, who are you doing this for? Are you doing it because you want to show up with all the other moms at the school gates and be like, oh, look, I'm so perfect. Like, I got this covered. Like, is anyone buying it? Like, number one, like, everybody else is still caught up in their own stuff. Is anyone, but who is this for? Like, it
Hmm.
can be. end up being so performative. And
Mm-hmm.
I always think the problem with that is, and the problem when you pretend everything is okay when it's not, is that you miss opportunities for real connection.
Yeah.
And that real connection is what helps you sustain and get through those difficult times. So, of course, there's tons of us that beat ourselves up. We always question,
Mm-hmm.
was that the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Did I do the right thing? Could I have responded differently? How could I have handled that? And we are always doing the best we can with what we've
Mm-hmm.
got. And sometimes that's not right. And sometimes that's not enough. And we have to sort of, pivot and
Yeah.
change our approach to things. But who is this perfect version of yourself for?
Mm.
It's not serving you. And it's not serving your kids, if I'm being brutally honest, because what are you
Mm-hmm.
teaching them? There's so many sort of high levels of anxiety connected to perfectionism. There's a really interesting study of this sort of socially perceived perfectionism, which is on the rise and is obviously an issue with all of social media and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
There was this Canadian study. I'm Canadian, so I love this study, where they studied a whole bunch of people over the age of 65 over 7 years. I can't remember. I think it was like 300 and something people. Anyways, within that period, 160 of those people passed away. And what they found was 80% of the people that passed away in that time period, so earlier than would have been necessarily expected, had socially prescribed perfectionism. Like
Mm-hmm.
perfectionism can literally kill you.
Well,
That,
perfectionism, it's a trauma response.
yeah. Oh, it's fawn completely, right?
Oh
It's
yeah.
completely fawn. But it's also often for mothers, I think, held up as this thing, this unattainable thing that we should be trying to reach. And I'm here to
Mm-hmm.
say, don't try, don't try and do it. Rebel, but just show up as you, like your authentic self.
Yeah.
And it's scary doing that sometimes because if you mess up, then it's you that's messed up. It's not this version of you that's messed up.
Yeah.
But that's the most real thing you have. And that is the you who's in the trenches. And it's okay to be in the trenches, especially in
Yeah.
parenthood, because it changes every 5 minutes. And, somebody said to me, like, oh, you've got a teenager, like it must be so much easier. And I was like, yeah, no. Like, I'm sorry, you think three is hard. Like, no, 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 no. 15, that's hard. Like, come back to me in 12 years, lady. And it's not that it gets one is harder than the other, they're just different, you know? At 3 years, you're not wondering what they're doing when they're out of your sight because you never let them out of your sight. Like they're not
Yeah.
out of your safety protective environment. Like, yes, their behavior's challenging, but so can teenagers be. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it all just shifts and changes. So I think like if you're starting their lives with this idea that you have to be perfect, what are you fostering and creating between you? How much honesty is going to happen between you and your kids? And I do think the biggest thing as your kids get older is how much they can be honest with you is one
Yeah.
of the most important seeds you can sow because the real world is difficult. And hopefully that, there's some guidance you can provide in surviving in the real world for them. But if they don't trust you or they don't feel secure telling you things when they've screwed up because you've
Yeah.
never screwed up in their eyes, they're going to be turning to someone else for that validation and
Mm-hmm.
that security. And
That
do you want
safety.
them turning to
Yeah.
other teenagers that are just as unstable as they are?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Emily. How can our listeners connect with you further if they'd like to do so?
Oh yeah, well, everything is on my website, emilybeecher.com. So that's my, all my coaching stuff, all my jumping off to my socials and everything else. But I always, when I was writing the musical, the team got together and we did a lot of story gathering workshops up and down the country and speaking to parents and hearing their stories and what they were moving through, what they had been through was the greatest privilege, I think, of my life. And getting to sort of share those stories with other people has been amazing. So, anyone who wants to get in touch, I'm always open to hear from people about their stories.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. It was a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure, Emily. Thanks for having me.
thank you so much for tuning in today. Be sure to follow the podcast so new episodes land right in your feed each week. And if you're wondering what your next step toward calmer, more confident motherhood looks like, take my free Find Your Next Step to Calm and Confidence quiz found in the show notes below. Until next time, Mama, mend the past so you can mama in peace.